Max, I think we will continue to get different winners, particularly in the first half of the season, similar to what happened in the first half of the 2012 season. I don't think we'll get 7 different winners in the first 7 races of this year. However, I do think we will see at least 4 to 5 different winners. But it was great to see Lotus and Kimi Raikkonen on the top 7 podium in Australia. None of us expected it. We all thought that Red Bull were going to run away with it, but they didn't. But Kimi, great to see him winning again for Lotus, and I genuinely hope he is a title contender for this season. The more drivers that are in contention to win the Drivers' Crown this year, the better. And it's also great to see a midfield team win a race as well, and I hope that's a sign of things to come. So yeah, Max, I do think we will get different winners, particularly in the first half of the season, and I think particularly during the middle part of the season, I think that's when we'll start to get the settled winners, so the likes of Vettel, Alonso, even Lewis. If he can, if Mercedes can build on what their encouraging performance in Australia, then yeah, I can certainly see Lewis winning some races. But again, to reiterate, Max, I think we will see different winners in the first half of the season, particularly with the teams still coming to get to grips with the new Pirelli tyres and Pirelli compounds for this season. And I also think that towards the middle part of the season, we'll start to get the usual suspects as to who will win races. To be honest with you, I'm not sure why Red Bull were off the pace. I think the weather conditions played their part, because okay, Saturday, the majority of it was tipping it down with rain, and we know what happened with qualifying. But when the sun came down and when we were in warmer conditions, it was obvious to see that the Red Bull was pretty quick, and the Red Bull were the best team in the dry conditions. But on Sunday, it wasn't as warm as say on Friday, and whether those conditions played a part in Red Bull being off the pace on Sunday, who knows? But I think it's important to realise that you shouldn't underestimate Red Bull. They're a great team, they've got a great car, and we saw that in free practice that when they're on it, they are really difficult to beat. And we also saw last season Red Bull didn't win as many races as they could have in the first half of 2012, but in the second half of the season they came on really strong. We saw Sebastian win the 4 races in Asia, and look where they ended up, in the drivers' standings and the constructors. So you'd be a fool to underestimate Red Bull, and it's only 1 race, so they shouldn't be overly concerned. And it's not about how you start, it's about where you finish. And if Red Bull end up having a strong second half to the season and continue to, if they can dominate most of the races, then they will be at least Constructors champions. So I think for Red Bull, they shouldn't worry about the fact that they were totally off the pace on Sunday, because even if that was the case, we saw Sebastian finishing 3rd, and that's despite the fact that they weren't able to dominate. So I think Red Bull, for them, they shouldn't be overly concerned. But I still think it'd be a fool to underestimate them. So who was my driver of the day at the Australian Grand Prix? 3 drivers that for me that come to mind straight away. Firstly, Kimi Raikkonen. I thought he did really well, drove a great race to start the race from 7th and end up winning the Grand Prix. Put off some good moves as well. Second driver, Adrian Sutil. Who would have thought on his return to Formula 1 he would have ended up leading the race, twice. So, and plus, before he came in for his first pit stop, Sutil was able to keep the likes of Sebastian, Vettel, Alonso, Massa, behind himself. Sutil did a very good job. Shame that he wasn't able to make his Superstocks work in the final stint that he did, but nonetheless, it was an encouraging return for Adrian Sutil. And I also think Jules Bianchi as well. I thought he did a very good job for Marussia in his first Grand Prix weekend as a full-time racer, and I believe he set the 11th quickest time on the race day, so that he can be very, very proud of that. And I think Jules will do well at Marussia. I think he'll certainly challenge Max Chilton to be that #1 driver at Marussia this year. But if I had to pick a driver out of the three of them, for me it would have to be Kimi Raikkonen. He did what he had to do. He overtook when he had to, and he drove a very good, race, and he put in a solid performance as well. So for me, my driver of the day would be Kimi Raikkonen. So can Force India challenge for 5th place in the Constructors? I'd love to see them challenge for 5th, but I think their main target is to finish 6th this year, to reclaim that 6th place ahead of Sauber, Williams and Toro Rosso. So that's Force India's main target, to finish 6th. But if they can challenge for 5th, then brilliant. I'd love to see them challenge for 5th place in the Constructors. I thought they had a very good weekend in Australia. I thought Adrian did a great job on Sunday, leading the Grand Prix twice on his return to Formula 1. Shame he wasn't able to make those super soft works in his final stint, but nonetheless to finish 7th and to pick up 6 points on his return, I'm sure he'll be pretty pleased with that. I think Force India can definitely build on what they achieved in Australia, and I could certainly see them having a good weekend in Malaysia. So I think 5th potentially might be out of Force India's reach this year, but I can certainly see them finishing 6th, and I could certainly see them giving the big boys a run for their money in some Grand Prix this season. Well, it hasn't exactly been the best of starts to the season for McLaren, has it? And when you're 2 seconds off the pace, it's simply not good enough for a team like McLaren, when really they should be right up there and challenging the Red Bulls, the Ferraris. They should be right up there. I've got a funny feeling with the way things are going at McLaren that 2013 could turn out to be another 2009, where the first half was pretty horrid for the team, but second half they had a much stronger half of the season, where we saw Lewis Hamilton winning a couple of races in 2009 in the second half of the season. So I could certainly see that being the case in 2013. And if McLaren want to be serious contenders for both the drivers and constructors' crowns this year, then they've got to have a massive improvement on that car, and they've got to get back to getting strong results. I don't think that will be the case at Malaysia, but if they can improve the car ahead of the Chinese Grand Prix, and if they can definitely improve on the car ahead of the Chinese Grand Prix, then I think McLaren will be okay. But I just hope that it's not a 2009 season where they have a terrible first half of the season, and they have a strong second half where really they should be. I want them to have a good, strong season throughout the whole of 2013. But yeah, I think McLaren, they definitely can bounce back, but it's going to take a lot of improvement, and it's going to take drastic action for them to get back to winning ways. My predictions for the Malaysian Grand Prix. Well, it's potentially rain on qualifying, and although Sunday's predicted to be a much drier race, basically similar conditions as to what we saw in Australia. I can certainly see the Lotus, Red Bulls, the Ferraris. I can see them being right up there. Mercedes, I think they could be in for a strong weekend. Force India, if they can build on what they achieved in Australia, I can certainly see them being in the mix. I'm going to go for Fernando Alonso to win in Malaysia this weekend. He did it last year, and I see no reason why he can't do it again this year. If McLaren can take advantage of the predicted wet conditions on Saturday, then who knows what they could achieve in Malaysia. But I'm going to go for Fernando Alonso to win. I'm going to go for Kimi to finish second, and I'll go for Sebastian Vettel to finish third as well. I don't think Red Bull are quite there just yet, but they will win races this year, and there will be weekends where they totally dominate. So Alonso, Kimi and Vettel is my prediction. The same three that finish on the podium in Australia, except I think Alonso will win this time round. Don't forget, you can send your questions to @baggies20 on Twitter for the next edition of Ask Manish, and I look forward to reading them. But for now, cheerio.